What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Show, where I, Graham Jason Matthews, break down all the original content you watch on the WWE Network and on Peacock. And today we're talking the November 6, 2023 edition of Raw Talk from last night. Really good episode of Raw on Monday, I thought. The Fallout edition from Crown Jewel, kicking off the road to Survivor Series and War Games. Really good stuff. This episode, as always, being hosted by Megan Morant, Matt Camp in the studio. They open up the episode running down the biggest headlines from Monday's show, recapping the fatal four-way match won by The Miz to crown a new number one contender to the Intercontinental Championship at Survivor Series against Gunther a little bit later on in the month. We hear from Imperium's Gunther and Ludwig Kaiser backstage on the show. Giovanni Vinci not on Raw and not on Raw Talk. I don't know if he wasn't there or if they did that on purpose because they're teasing tension right now, and he's on the outs with Gunther and Kaiser. But Kaiser cost DIY their match against the Creed brothers, and then Gunther was seen watching the four-way backstage, the number one contenders match, and then they were both here. So I don't know where Vinci was. They didn't address that, whatever. Gunther praises The Miz, but he also says, come Survivor Series, Miz is going to have to face reality. And he calls him the rightful number one contender after winning decisively in that four-way, which I found out this morning. I don't think he was supposed to, actually. Meltzer reported, and his reporting can go back and forth, but he seemed pretty confident when he said on Twitter earlier today that it was supposed to be a double kick out. Or, I'm sorry, neither guy was supposed to kick out, Ricochet or Reed. But Ricochet kicked out. He got knocked a little loopy earlier in the match from that weird bump that he took. And he didn't get back up immediately, so hopefully he's okay. Might have been concussed, who knows. He still wrestled anyway. They just allowed him to continue, so this type of shit has to stop. But anyway, so that might have been why he kicked out. Reed did not. Miz won. He was always supposed to win. So thankfully it wasn't Ivar who won by accident, and they kind of have to correct course because it wasn't supposed to be him. They're still doing Miz and Ivar next week anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But anyway, back to the Imperium interview here. Kaiser says that Miz and DIY, because they're feuding with DIY right now, are not up to Imperium standards, and they are the most dominant force on Monday Night Raw. So Miz is facing Ivar next week. We might get DIY and Imperium Part 2 next week on Raw. I assume this is leading to, based on the report and the rumor from last Monday, and the interaction that DIY had with The Miz when DIY was walking out to the ring, Miz was walking to the back last week on Raw, that we're probably getting Miz and DIY against all of Imperium, not next week on Raw, but probably the go-home show before Survivor Series in 2 weeks, I would have to imagine. So that sounds like a good match. Matt Camp says that Gunther has galvanized The Miz, and they preview Miz versus Ivar coming up next Monday on Raw, as I mentioned. They recap the Judgment Day versus New Day match won by Judgment Day. They preview Judgment Day defending the undisputed WWE Tag Team titles in a rematch from last month against Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso next Monday on Raw. They recap the Battle Royal won by Zoe Stark to become the next number one contender to the Women's World Championship at Survivor Series against Rhea Ripley. They preview Rhea Ripley versus Zoe Stark. A match I'm looking forward to. It has a weird heel versus heel dynamic. I'm sure they'll rally behind Ripley in Chicago. Same thing with Gunther and Miz. Miz is clearly the babyface in that feud. They might be just turning him into a full-on face coming out of that match. Like with Bronson, he faced Gunther and he's still a heel. That might be the case with Miz. I get the sense they're just turning him babyface, which I'm not actually opposed to that or against. I've said this before elsewhere, including here on the channel, but I think he has potential to do really well in that role based on how he's done in that role in the past, and people will claim that he failed as a face, and he did, but I blame the booking. That's a whole other discussion. But anyway, with Ripley and Stark, I think that should be a really good match, and that should be enough to carry that match, even if people aren't going crazy for it, because Stark isn't this, great babyface. Even if they put someone like a Tegan Nox in there, who I would have preferred to see in that spot. She's busy right now at the tag team title stuff with her and Natalya against Chelsea Green and Piper Niven. Piper's facing Tegan next week on Raw. I'll get to that in a minute. But, so I'm looking forward to Rhea and Stark is basically what I'm saying. Speaking of Tegan Nox, we hear from her backstage, and she says that she sent the message in the Battle Royal that she's back. Because she was gone for a couple of weeks. She had that match on NXT a few weeks ago against Lyra Valkyria, got hurt. She's been gone for about 3 or 4 weeks, so she's back now, which is great news. And she basically just said she wants to get her hands on Chelsea Green. So they preview Tegan Nox against Piper Niven for next week's Raw. They recap the DIY loss to the Creed brothers that I mentioned earlier. We hear from the Creed brothers and Ivy Nile, the newest members of the Monday Night Raw roster we found out last night. The Creeds call it a childhood dream come true. And they say that there was a need for Creed on Monday nights. Ivy Nile calls the Battle Royal an amazing experience. She had a really strong showing in that match, lasting until the final 4, before being taken out kind of unceremoniously by Nia Jax, who was already eliminated. So that might be her first rival on Raw is Nia Jax. And I'm no Nia Jax fan, but Nia Jax has heat. maybe the wrong type of heat, but she has heat. So Ivy Nile working with her might be a benefit. So I'm honestly kind of looking forward to seeing how that turns out. Hopefully Nia Jax doesn't injure her. But anyway, so they say that they're turning idols into rivals, and Diamond Mine is forever. So that was their interview. Good stuff there, and you can clearly tell it means a lot to them. They all get along so well. It means a lot to them to be on the Monday Night Raw roster, and they'll shine, no doubt. I mean, they had a great match last week with Alpha Academy, a very good match this week at DIY in the time they were allotted. I think they're off to a pretty strong start on Monday nights. And then to close out the show here, they recap the close to Raw with the Rollins and Zayn Great World Heavyweight Championship main event and the War Games announcement. It's going to be Rollins, Rhodes, Zayn, and Uso against all of Judgment Day, sans Rhea Ripley, obviously. And inside War Games comes Survivor Series. They preview said matchup, and they also plug Gunther and Ludwig Kaiser for the bump coming up tomorrow. Good edition of Raw Talk here. Not a lot of analysis. I don't really watch for the analysis anyway, so it doesn't really matter. They did a good job recapping a very eventful edition of Raw on Monday, setting up stuff for Survivor Series, which isn't for another 3 weeks. They have another 2 Raws, but already we have, 3 or 4 matches set in stone between War Games, Miz and Gunther, and Ripley and Stark. And obviously more SmackDown matches to be announced probably as soon as Friday's SmackDown. So I like that a lot. They wasted no time kicking off the build to Survivor Series with a very good Raw. I hope it continues. Raw's been very entertaining lately, so I'm hoping it continues. And this is just a sign of things to come. Thank you guys for checking out my review of Raw Talk. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. Have an awesome one, guys. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.